Hi, and welcome to another Great Sistr webinar. And this one is a really important one, which is actually at the core and the heart of Sistr, all about mentoring and championing other women. So, yeah, it's sort of our bloodline at Sistr. We've got two amazing women who are going to join us, who are just absolute mentoring champions and experts. Becky Foden, who has worked for 20 years, haven't you, in sort of HR and talent and diversity and chat, and a massive women champion, and a huge great mentoring advocate, aren't you? But we'll hear more about you in a minute. And then Andrea, who is the founder of Social Starters, another amazing social enterprise setup, and winner of NatWest Women's Champion Award in 2019. And what she doesn't know, in fact, what either of these two don't know about mentoring and helping other women, then there's no point knowing, quite frankly. So just and I just want to point out, this is not a fake background behind me. It looks like it is. I'm hoping someone walks past in a minute, but it looks like a really poncy background. But so Becky, where did you start? Like, I love stories and like where people start. And what was your sort of story, and the passion and fire in your belly of helping out other women and the importance of it?
Hi, everyone. Really good question. So I think it's fair to say that I started my life really on the wrong side of the tracks. So many people don't know that about me, because obviously I sound like I'm quite posh, or I've been to a great school. I'm married to an army officer. But actually, I went to a really rotten comprehensive school in Bristol. It was actually shut down and decommissioned because it was not fit for purpose. And I think my life started there, really, of not really having any aspirational role models. In fact, most people actually ended up in prison, or being single parents or whatnot. So for me, I think my life has been a bit of a journey, and I've always struggled. And it's been a bit of a fight, if I'm being honest, in terms of me trying to fight for what's best for me as a woman. And also, as I told Emma earlier, I also suffer from racial imposter syndrome. So I'm from a mixed heritage background. So I think fast track forward, I ended up landing a role in HR and recruitment. And over a few, as Emma said, about 2 decades, I've been watching lots of people really progress in their careers. So my last role was at Transport for London, where I was hiring the leaders for TfL to keep London moving, growing and working. And these leaders were absolutely pivotal in terms of actually trying to build London to be a world-class city. And it was really important that we brought leaders in that also represented the working demographic of London. And what I was watching over 5 years of working there were these amazing women that we were bringing into the organisation. And I was, giving them the mantras of like, you need to lean in, you need to, own your imposter syndrome, fake it, make it, become it, all the
lines.
Yeah, women walking a tightrope, in meetings, and stop those men mansplaining and all that kind of stuff. And what happened in this journey was that I became really enlightened. And thinking about my background, I really realised that I didn't actually have any role models. And so, and also I started to run mentoring and sponsoring programmes for Transport for London as well, where we were trying to push more women through our organisation that were, as I call them, the forgotten middle. So actually, most organisations are sitting on this kind of treasure chest of hidden talent gems. And what they tend to do is focus on the external hiring, but actually, there are lots of great talent internally. So we're trying to develop more women and also people from different backgrounds. And so through this journey, I've kind of become a little bit of a champion for women, but also I've kind of uncovered that, yes, mentoring is really important, and it's important for me. So a big champion of mentoring. I've been on a bit of a life journey, and I think that, for me personally, I have a mentor at the moment. He is extremely helpful to be a soundboard. I've also started as in my day job, I'm actually head of resourcing at Capita, but I also help as a strategic advisor on another mentoring platform, as well as helping with Sistr as well. So mentoring for me really does matter.
Cool. And Andrea, you started Social Starters with like 50 quid. and what's the story? What was your story for like starting that and like continuing now? And you've got an amazing podcast, haven't you, with June Sutherland, who's always, I've been a big like fan of hers, and like it's champion women's voices podcast, isn't it? So yeah, what's your story?
Well, wow, I mean, what an amazing journey, Becky. And similarly to you, I think I felt growing up, we're probably of a similar age, growing up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. It was just, the corporate world was just a very male-dominated environment. And I intentionally went into the media at the time. That felt where I could make my difference. But I fell into advertising sales, which wasn't quite the vision. Whilst I learned some amazing skills, it was so male dominated, and with that then came all of the culture that industry is, rife and known for, that includes lots of workplace bullying, and just a really, really intense environment. And as a woman in that environment, I think you had to really step up and prove yourself. And there's some amazing women that were inspirational to me in that space. But fast forward 10 years, I knew that wasn't really where I wanted to be. And having been on a bit of a journey myself, volunteering and mentoring people who'd perhaps fallen down, a certain path or had slipped through the cracks, I then was really inspired by this idea that, people in general, their story, their life is almost dictated to them. They don't necessarily choose that path. And mentoring is such an incredible tool to see beyond, your horizons that have been laid out for you. You can push through that glass ceiling, as we often say, and completely change your life and do amazing work. And it was through working with young people down in Brixton in South London who were running this awesome magazine. And then in my role, I was connecting them to journalists and other content creators and marketeers who were mentoring them, enabling them to, create awesome content. That I was able to really see the power of mentoring. And for me, I think socio-politically at the time, we had the coalition government had come in and the university fees hiked. And young people were really feeling quite dissident. We had the riots in 2011 in London. And there was just a lot going on, and young people, I think, were a bit fed up and wondering, how can I go and create my own job, because university isn't going to help me do that now. And so entrepreneurship started to become a really big area of interest to me. And it was in that space of exploration where I was doing my own research really into, what are the challenges that young entrepreneurs face, that then led me to Kenya, where I met some what I would call social entrepreneurs, that they didn't know they were social entrepreneurs. They didn't know what social entrepreneurship is. I found that even just sharing my skills in business development and sales, which for many years I kind of felt a bit frustrated by, ended up being my career, I was able to make quite a big difference as a mentor or as a business coach. And I was too learning. So it was this two-way learning process that was so powerful that I then thought, why don't I scale me up in a way? I'm just one person. I'm fairly average. I'm making a difference here. So why don't we see if we can ask other people if they'd like to come to Kenya in this particular instance, and let's match them to other young social entrepreneurs to solve problems and help them accelerate their businesses. And that's really how it started. So when I say, we really launched Social Starters off the back of 50 quid, really determined to prove this concept in a really lean, bootstrapped way. And it was actually thanks to one of our early business advisors, an amazing woman who was ex-Legal and General. I think she was the CEO, and she then left and retired. She supported us and even, gave us a small grant in order for us to be able to set up our first project, which I just think is such a testament, isn't it, to when a woman sees the potential in another group of women and really believes in what they're trying to do. And the belief then that you can curate, within that moment, allows you to go and do things you would have never imagined you would ever, see possible.
Yeah.
So that then led me to supporting even more women, not just in Kenya, but in other countries around the world. We work with women from favelas in Brazil for a couple of years until recently, supporting them to get their projects off the ground and to make more money, to then solve more problems in their communities. And we've just been so passionate about supporting the underserved entrepreneur, as we called it. So this is any entrepreneur who just hasn't had it handed to them on a plate. Perhaps they've got lived experience of the social issues that they're trying to tackle within their organisation. Just being a woman alone makes you an underserved entrepreneur, to be fair. If you remember the review that NatWest did research into back in 2019 that said only 1% of VC funding was going to women founders in investment.
Yeah, and it hasn't got that much better in the last 3 years, to be honest. I think the last year it's got even worse. So
yeah, so there's a big levelling up that needs to be done. So we focus there by providing much needed business support, coaching, mentoring, to push through, not just in leadership, because as you mentioned with imposter syndrome, it's so right, isn't it? You've got to really believe in yourself and know that you can do anything. And then likewise, there's those key essential business skills that, you know, as much as we can be a generalist or all things to many people, there's just some skills you don't have that you need to get.
Nice. When you look back, and for both of you, when you look back, like when you were sort of just starting out or like early 20s, what looking back at it, what would you have wanted help on? What was the things that you would have when you think about going through? I mean, like I went into a very male industry, mid-20s, launching my own thing, and I had there was no one. Because there was no one doing the same thing, so it was I just put myself in loads of different networking groups which were mainly male, and they were mainly sort of in their 50s, 60s, and I blagged my way in, and I just wanted to listen to everyone. That's how I learned, just listen to their confidence and the energy and the way they spoke, and sort of that was kind of but yeah, what do you wish, Becky, what do you wish you had?
So yeah, I think, Emma, that's exactly why you're where you are today. So it's about seeking the uncomfortable. So one of the big things that any person needs to do to realize their potential is to be really uncomfortable. And actually, the more uncomfortable you are, it means that you're on the right track, particularly if you have higher aspirations. So I regularly now seek the uncomfortable spot. And I think also having a career plan. So for me, I really zoom in on career mentoring, because there are people that have the very standard vertical career move. So you'll see those individuals that almost have that set career plan over a life cycle of 10 to 15 years, and they tend to move jobs every 2 years. And what you find with the behavior of those individuals, and these end up being in the C-suite, generally men, is that they're planning their next move. So for me, it's about thinking about this career plan and finding a mentor to help you to break this down into bite-sized chunks, small pieces, and to think about a 3, 6, 12-month plan. And that those could be very small things that you do. So, for example, it could be talking at a virtual event to build your confidence. It could be actually promoting yourself on LinkedIn. So sorting out your LinkedIn profile page, from redoing your CV, from actually reaching out to somebody and developing a network. So in terms of a career plan, it doesn't have to be, in the next 5 years, I want to be the next CEO. It can be, actually, I'd like to be in a leadership role, but on my journey there, these are the things that I can do that are very tangible, and often you need to reward yourself as well. So once you've actually sought the uncomfortable spot, you then reward yourself, whether you like shopping or a nice coffee or whatever it is. It's being kind to yourself. So self-care is really important. So I think rewinding back, it would be having the confidence to be uncomfortable. So Emma, you felt very uncomfortable being in a very male-dominated industry, and actually that kind of like inspired you to move onwards, right? So and actually having the faith around that, and actually having a mentor to help kind of boost you and have those conversations. So for me, it's a career plan and being uncomfortable, and networking is really important as well.
Andrea, what do you think?
I absolutely love that. Seeking the uncomfortable. I have a similar mantra myself, which is around running into the fire. Like the thing you fear the most is probably the direction you need to go in. And that links back then, I think, to confidence and self-belief. So I wish when I was back at school, as much as I was probably quite a confident child on the outside, I was incredibly insecure and a little bit lost, really, deeper down. It took many years to figure all of that out and bring myself together as one whole. And so I suppose as a teenager, it would have just been amazing to have more support around leadership, self-leadership. And I'm sure a lot of this is now popping up in schools, but we need a lot more of it, because if young people can learn who they really are from a younger age and tune into that and be mindful in that process as well, and really learn how to be still and, build that strong inner core, I think that they will make decisions earlier on in life that could have a bigger knock-on effect and get them moving in the direction that they want to go from an earlier stage. And I think in and around that leadership piece, you can then bring in, entrepreneurial mindsets, growth mindsets, and lots of really awesome skills that we've probably come to learn as we've grown up. That mean we're here, I think, Emma, maybe you're a special case, but we're here in our 40s, perhaps living our best career lives. They would have been great to be doing that, earlier on, I think. And many aspire to that, don't they?
I call it career hacks, right? It's like, what can you learn from like the oldies? and
the fuck ups they've made. that's where you learn the lessons.
Yeah, but it's that kind of turning yourself inside out. So how do you kind of topple yourself? Honestly, I really regularly think this. How do I disrupt myself, Rebecca, to really get that career hack? Because I've got time to make up for, right? I'm a military wife. I've had to start my career, follow the flag, so I've got time to make up for. So I'm looking at a career hack myself now. And I try to bring that to young people. So I recently, we're actually working with a guy at the moment who's a millennial, and he's amazing. And he is definitely has a huge growth mindset. But one thing that he's done, which I just think is the ultimate career hack, is that he's reaching out to LinkedIn. He wants to work in growth and partnership management. So he's identified 10 people on LinkedIn that are directors in growth and partnership management. And he's reached out to them for a coffee. And now an individual has now offered, a woman has offered to mentor him. So it's that idea of not being afraid. There are so many people out there that want to help you. And actually, most people like to talk about themselves. We all have an ego, right? So reaching out to individuals into the unknown or the abyss, I think is a really good thing. Because actually, whilst you might get a few knockbacks, the reality is that if you keep trying, someone's actually going to believe in you, and that will give you that ultimate belief in yourself. So yes, I think that whole uncomfortable space is really important.
Yeah, but that everyone loves telling their story. People always say to me, "Do you not get bored telling your story?" I'm like, "No, I love it. Where else can I tell it? Who else wants to hear it?" It's sort of and I've said that to people, and especially at the moment in the last year with no one going anywhere. Actually, there's a lot of amazing mentors and people that you look up to and you've watched them who are sat unable to get on an airplane, unable to go into offices, who are sat at home bored. And they want to speak to different people. And that now is the time to literally just have no shame to reach out and message, like you said, that guy did, to all these people. Because what's the worst case that can happen? They don't reply to your message, or they say, "Sorry, I'm swamped." I mean, that's literally the worst thing that can happen in that. But Andrea, what have you what's your advice on, like, because a lot of people go, "Well, I need a mentor," or they go, "I think I need a mentor," because you're told to need a mentor and want a mentor. And they go, "Well, how and where am I going to find it? What am I looking for? What kind of person?" There's that sort of, how do you answer those questions?
Yeah, there's naturally a lot of questions, and there's a lot of areas where one could be mentored as well, right? And I was just thinking this before we came into this call. If you were going to build your mentoring dream team, then it's almost a bit like taking, I don't know if you know the Wheel of Life coaching exercise, where you create 8 sections on a circle, which look at all the areas of your life, from money to career to adventure, to love and relationships, family, and all the things that matter to you. And then it's, when you do that exercise, you score on a scale of 1 to 10 how happy you are in those areas. And say you had a low score coming up in a certain area, that might be an opportunity then for you to go and get a mentor to support you, to help you start to move things forward in that area, so that you start to feel a bit more fulfilled and like you're living the life that you want to be living. And we do this within the entrepreneurial context as well, but by looking at the core business areas, from marketing to operations and finance, and trying to understand or unearth where you're perhaps a little bit weaker, or you've got less skill set within your team, and then finding a mentor who can come and help plug that skills gap is an essential part of the strategy of designing that advisory board. So I think for individual people, you can take that concept of the advisory board and apply it to your own life. Why not? I mean, imagine how fast you can accelerate through coming out of this current situation to creating the life that's of your dreams, really. Maybe it feels a bit out of reach, but you can get there with the support around you.
Yeah, and on that, Becky, what do you think on the because a lot of people think, oh, we just need one mentor, and actually I agree with you completely, Andrea. What are the different things, the different aspects, and actually find loads and build this kind of, you say advisory board. I'll say, imagine you're a football coach and you're picking the team, and you've got the ones that get the goals, the ones in the middle, the one that it's building that team, isn't it?
So I really agree with this, actually, and it's such a good point. I think it's about life mentoring, isn't it? And I think mentoring can come in different facets, right? So you can have a traditional mentoring relationship whereby it's a one-to-one, you have regular contact, and you're trying to deal with a specific challenge or issue. It could be any issue around confidence or career or whatever. But also, I think there's the informal mentoring. So if I looked at my sphere of people around me, I've got that formal mentor that helps me, regular check-ins every month, and we chat through any challenges that I have and what wisdoms can he bring to me. But then I also look at what I call my industry North Stars. So I have a network of people on my WhatsApp group that fundamentally do exactly the same job as me, but I would say that they are absolutely my North shining stars, and I fundamentally want to be walking in their footsteps. So they provide me with informal kind of mentoring, help, support. But I also have people that I also have aspirational role models that I look up to as well. So what I mean by that are leaders out there. So I've really been clear to myself from a values leadership perspective, who are those people that I want to be, or that I want to espouse similar values. So I follow them on LinkedIn, I follow them on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever, and I hear them every day in my social media channel. So fundamentally, a bit of them rubs off on me. So I think that you can be mentored traditionally, but don't also think about mentoring just as this in-person contact, because in the virtual world, there's lots of great podcasts, webinars, whether it's TED Talks, whatever it is. There are amazing people out there talking with a great platform that want to reach people, and actually that's a form of mentoring as well. So I constantly surround myself with my own sort of ecosystem of great people, and these people are people that I feel that I get something from, but I also give something back. So I would see my role in that as being reverse mentor. So I help them, so I can give a different opinion or different view.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that's such a great way of putting it, in that you can have that one-to-one contact in the traditional sense. But then now you're speaking like this, I'm thinking, well, the role that Tim Ferriss has played for me as a mentor, even Russell Brand, these guys have really supported me and influenced me through various times in my life, and that is mentorship. You're right.
I've had Dolly Parton since I was little.
Oh my God, I love Dolly Parton.
Anyone that knows me knows that she's literally my all-time hero on so many levels. And actually on podcasts, Brené Brown is another one, and actually she did a podcast, I think it was beginning of this year, with Dolly as the guest, and I was like, oh my God, It's the two of them together, and then that's an amazing podcast to listen to.
You can get something back. I mean, even Russell Brand, I find really interesting, actually, his podcast, but you always get something back. So the other thing is reading, being a sponge, getting that information from blogs. I regularly read blogs from Forbes, from Inc. I have an aspiration that one day I'm going to write a blog for Forbes on Inc., right? Because the other thing is if you actually put something down on paper, it happens, right? So be bold. Actually write down the impossible, right? Because I do think impossible means I'm possible. So write something down that's absolutely out of, just totally off piste, or it's just from your perspective, totally unachievable. But if you write it down, it does happen, because what you're doing is kind of changing your thinking and your processes in your brain to think about, actually, how am I actually going to get there? So I do think there is a power in actually the written word. So I think that's important too.
It's can and can't as well. I do it with our 6-year-old. He's like, I can't do it, and I'm like, no, how can you do it? And I've always said that to people. It's like the minute it changes something in your brain. The minute you start thinking, how can I do something? How even if it's completely impossible, your brain changes to start thinking about the possibilities, and how the minute you say you can't do something or won't do something, it's very finite. That's it. The brain stops. There's no thought process. But how can I? It makes you go down, all different avenues, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so true. And those opportunities will open up to you because you become naturally receptive to the world. So I honestly believe that everything that I've said I wanted to do, that I felt was totally unachievable, I've done. And that's not because I've had any privilege in that. It's something that I've made happen. And it's just by me having a very open mindset and also trying to build those networks. So I think naturally you'll move in that journey.
Yeah. And Andrea, when you're like building that perfect dream, where would you say to people to go and look? Because you've got you've obviously, Becky said, on the LinkedIn, even if that's like saying the COVID on LinkedIn, where would you other places to go and find people?
Oh my God! Well, other than the networks here on this call, you've got. Oh gosh! I mean, I use a service called Relationship Hero, which I can really recommend, which is specifically relationship coaching. Whether it's that you're looking for one or you're in one, and you have things to iron out within it, and that's amazing. Everybody could do with a relationship hero in their life, I think. But there are so many networks. I think we're almost overwhelmed by them, aren't we? Maybe we can share a few around after this call. It just depends on what you're looking for. Is it business mentoring? Is it career? Is it life? What have you? I don't know if I should name names, but
I don't mind.
Yes. I think you've got to start with what's the area that you're looking for, and to be honest, even if you don't have any leads, you can just take to Google and Google it, or even ask in the Sistr group who they would recommend, because I think referrals and recommendations are always probably the first place to start.
Yeah, and also on. Okay.
So I was going to say, I think there's also this idea of peer-to-peer mentoring. So actually, you don't always have to have like your kind of North Star, a leader above you. It could be actually somebody that is a peer. It could be somebody, for example, Andrea. I could say, Andrea, I'd really value your conversation and your views on something. That for me is like mentoring, it's that coaching, it's that actually networking, it's building that rapport and relationship. So I think don't be afraid to ask people around you that actually are in your vicinity, because the chances are is that you can bounce ideas off each other, and effectively they will open up their networks to you. So you don't have to look far. You can just look around you, and I think in the Sistr channel that's a really good starting point.
Yeah, and it's true, because I've said that, and people would say, well, why would I need mentoring? I'm like, it's not mentoring, it's that different, that mentoring or championing. You just sometimes you need people to bounce ideas off, and people in the same place. And I think that's where it becomes hard as well, because often the people closest to you and surrounding you are the ones that don't understand you, and they don't understand because they've known you since you were little, they've known you from school, they've known or family members. They can be the most negative, the most critical, because you're threatening that relationship that they've always had, that you're threatening the safe space. that's always been, and it's that comfort zone, isn't it? And when you threaten that and they think, oh, she's going to go that way, or it's very easy for people to be to criticize. So it's then kind of, well, where would you then look to bounce ideas off, or bounce, you know, to actually. So for me, I like, you know, finding different female founders who have sort of battled to found what they're founding, and because I know they've probably got the same, or they're juggling kids as well, and they will get it. They'll get the headspace. And even if I don't know them, I've never met them, it's like having that conversation with someone that just gets it. Because I know the people really closest to me, even some of my closest friends, won't get it. They won't understand it, and I don't expect them to understand it, if that makes sense. It's nothing against them. It's finding the different tribes in the different areas that sort of get the different spaces, if that makes sense.
There's something, just to build on that, around the disassociation when you haven't got that deep, complex dynamic, that relationship, like with a family member or a group of best friends that you've known since school, right? It's neutral. And in that environment, nobody's afraid to challenge anybody's thinking.
Yeah.
And you need people to say no to you sometimes, or to tell you that an idea is rubbish.
Daily.
You can't have constant cheerleaders. Whilst there is a place for that, definitely, it's not always helpful just to be told you're amazing and that all your ideas are going to fly.
Amazing, yeah. I normally get, no, that's a shit idea. No, that's another one. Too far, Emma, too far.
It's that idea of psychological safety, isn't it? You know, it's like you need to find someone that you can be really authentically yourself and be honest. So for me, any relationship that would be valuable is one where it's a safe place. It's Chatham House rules. You know, you can actually, and perhaps to position conversations like that as well sometimes, because I guess the value of mentoring would be that somebody's really going to help you with any stubborn issue in your life, and some of those issues can be quite challenging. You know, and the reality is that mentor probably has gone through that same experience, or can give a different view on things. So I think the idea of going outside of your network is also important, but you can also build a network as well. So Emma, you're really brilliant at this around personal branding. So, you know, for example, if you're out there and you're actually building a tribe, it's very likely that you might find mentors in that way. So I've been able, through posting a lot on LinkedIn, I've managed to find, I guess, a tribe of people that have been cheerleading me, and vice versa. And actually that's been very energizing. It's made me realize that I'm on the right track, and that sometimes, you know, we talk to each other around having these courageous conversations, because actually if you want to push yourself ahead, you need to have that courageous conversation with yourself and with people around you. So I do think this idea of brand as well is really important. So what are you actually doing on your own personal brand at the moment, and how are you actually trying to build your network of people, whether it's, you know, if you are interested in meeting startup co-founders or social entrepreneurs, or actually you're working in a large corporate, in which case, you know, you can perhaps build a map of those types of people that are doing similar things, and then reach out to them or follow them. And that's how you kind of build your tribe.
And they will have a story to tell, and they will have seen hardship. And actually, if they're the next generation along slightly, or at least they've gotten there sooner, they've got those wisdoms, they've had those learnings, and they'll be more than willing to pass them on, particularly because that's what women love to do. We don't want other people to suffer like we have. We want to shortcut, you know, those journeys to success for everybody else. So never be afraid to reach out would be my biggest tip.
And women as well. And I think for too long we've kind of, if you want to get ahead, you have to behave like a man in a business space and stuff. And actually, some things we do really well, and it's just that natural female thing, is we gather information. We're gatherers. We love a chat, and we love, you know, we're a community. We love, you know, actually that helping each other out, and it's what women naturally do. But I think for too long we've been made to sort of compete against each other for only a certain number of places in that business world. And it's not a natural, if we do what we do naturally, like this chat, talk bollocks.
I agree. So
it's, you know,
important.
absolutely amazing things can happen.
It's so important. I get told a lot actually at work, because I'm hiring leaders, you know, and actually, can you find me a woman leader that's from an ethnic minority background? I'm like, these people are not low hanging fruit out there, right? And what have you done, you know, Miss whoever, in terms of your own mentoring? Have you built a pipeline yourself? So I think there's a responsibility for every person to be a mentor, because actually, if everyone was a mentor, then how great would the world be? Because we'd always be developing ourselves. But also the idea that, you know, let's actually hire women that have sharp elbows. And we don't want to hire women that have sharp elbows. We want women to be women. So again, I think this stereotype, or only women that can succeed have sharp elbows. My experience is that women that have sharp elbows will actually only reach to a certain extent, and that there will be a glass ceiling, because they won't bring people with them on a journey, and they will not demonstrate empathy or inclusive leadership. And these are all the qualities today that millennials and Gen Zs want, of which 50% of the workforce are now millennials. So I think women should just be women, and we've got great consultative skills, networking, as Emma says it, gathering information, really great social skills, and we should just really, you know, feel comfortable in our own skins.
Yeah. And Andrea, on there's all, but what's your advice? And because also you can see someone, you go, well, they'd make a great, I want to speak to them and make a great mentor. But it doesn't matter, they might be amazing on paper, but what's your advice on finding good fits, as in the right mentors for you? Regardless of who they are and what they've done, it might, like my full-on in your face, quite, you know, tough love approach might not fit a lot of people. So yeah, on that level, what's your advice?
It's definitely good to surround yourself with people that are different to you and have different styles and approaches, because then that exposes you, which is really good. And it's not necessarily, you know, the best way to grow by being surrounded by people that are carbon copies of you. But there are sometimes times when we need a little bit of a cuddle, and somebody that is more of a mirror reflection in terms of style and tone might be what we need in that moment if we've been through a difficult time. My suggestion is to just not lock in anything too long term from the off until you've had that courting process. And it is a bit like going on dates. Maybe you just want to have a 20-minute chat initially and see what the vibe is and see if you're on the same page. Then maybe you say, let's book in an hour or an hour and a half just to get down into the nitty gritty. And then you might decide after that if you're going to continue. And then if you decide you want to continue, maybe it's just for 3 months initially before you lock in something slightly longer term. And some of my earlier mentors, when I started the business, would say, like, look, you know, there's a shelf life at which I'm going to be able to support you, and you're going to grow, and then your needs are going to get greater, and there'll be somebody else out there for you who's going to take you to that next level. And I think just having that honest chat from the off means that there's no pressure, because a lot of people feel pressure, don't they, to attend that call because you've got it booked.
Yeah.
And if it just keeps being like a nice, that's slightly fluffy, kind of aimless conversation, it doesn't really necessarily, well, it's not necessarily the best use of everybody's time. So I think being mindful and respectful of that is really important.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this idea of sprint mentoring is good, because mentors as well, that they're challenged by their own time commitments, and the idea of locking down, you know, a 9-month commitment with a mentoring relationship may not be needed, right? So I think this idea of having an initial meeting to really flesh out what it is that you're trying to overcome, and to put a bit of an agreement in place, and it could be a bit of a sprint mentoring session. It could just be a career plan that they're helping you with, or it could be that actually these are some advice. It could just be advice that you need now. It's not long-term advice. So I think it's important not to lock things down and to be really agile and fluid on it. Because the more people that you meet and be mentored by, and I've been mentored by lots of people informally and informally, those people become part of my community of people and this sphere of people around me, which I referred to earlier. And so, you know, they'll become your advocates. So I would really encourage talking to more people and really finding, something from each of those relationships or from those connections that can help open doors for you.
You and Andrea, you touched on it. The of just being mindful of not ending up having just loads of like just chats.
Yeah.
You know, sort of you end up an hour later and you've just spoken about. So do you think it's important when you do have a mentor, when you like book a, you know, it's like a 20-minute coffee chat or something, to actually have a bit of an agenda in there, just to have go right, these are the questions I want to ask. So have it sort of a bit more not formal, but actually that, so you do go away, because as I said, it's easy for us to chat, and I can end up 2 hours down the line and having not really discussed much at all of any importance, but of actually having that going right, it's 20 minutes and actually these are the 3 kind of key questions I want to ask. Do you think that is important at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a place for a bit of small talk at the beginning to get to know each other, because, you know, we're British for starters, and second of all, it's just nice. But having some clear challenges or goals or things you want to get out of the conversation are going to be really helpful. And all I'd add to that is, as much as it's important to make sure we're not wasting anybody's time in terms of the, you know, the structure and the chat. If you do get time in with somebody, I think it's just so important to respect that time and really hold it dear, and make sure it's in the diary and that you get reminders and alerts, and that you don't turn up late or completely miss it altogether, because it's disrespectful, because that person's giving you their time. Usually it's for free, right? But second of all, imagine if the nugget of wisdom that you got from that session was the thing that changed the course of your life forever. So you don't know what you're missing out on.
Yeah, I think there's another piece as well around time and commitment, because if you have a longer term relationship with a mentor and you're not taking your own personal accountability, I think that can that can not be also conducive to the relationship. So it's important that you're prepared before meetings, that you regularly monitor what you agreed or actions that the mentor suggested, and that you can feed back. So I think there's a piece around personal accountability. So it's not just a case of a mentor providing you with advice and guidance, and then, you know, as the trustee of that relationship, you're then not activating or not actioning anything. I think it's important to go back at the next meeting to talk through how you tackled that through that person's advice and guidance, and perhaps even create a list. I've seen work very successfully actually when I was at TfL, where we ran quite a big mentoring program for women. One of the most successful relationships and it was a very structured program, was where the mentor and mentee agreed a list. It was almost like a red list in red pen of all the areas that she struggled with, and literally every month they checked off every area. They removed those personal barriers. It could have been confidence, it could have been actually just exposure to a network, or in terms of creating more visible leadership brand, but they tackled each of those areas. So and that the mentee actually went away with homework, right, with assignments to do. So I think it's important that as part of the relationship, you need to take mentoring. If you're in a structured mentoring program, take it seriously, take the actions, go back, feedback. And, you know, that way I think the relationship, and from your own personal view, will you'll actually reach your potential quicker.
Yeah, and there's that. What do you think on the advice for? We'll move on to like mentor, but for the mentee, because I've had, you know, spoken to someone, you know, one thing I felt is they don't want to listen. They don't, you know what I mean? They've got it, and they think they know it all already, and and I always say that to my advice is just have a totally open mind and going right. I just want to learn. I want to be a sponge and just listen. But that's both ways, mentor mentee. Listening is sort of
I'm
big
a fan
one.
of I don't mind taking this one, but I'm a fan of validating. So if somebody says something and it doesn't feel right to you, then ask other mentors, speak to other experts, or research it. Speak to other founders if you're running a business, specifically if these are key strategic, you know, business critical decisions that you're looking for answers on. And, you know, it's important to trust the gut, isn't it? So particularly when you have that entrepreneur who's like, oh, I don't know if I like that advice, that doesn't feel right. You shouldn't ignore that. But at the same time, to completely disregard or ignore people's, you know, use of that sounding board, it could be a missed opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's true, because also everyone operates differently, and that's the thing. It's like I know so many different founders, and we're all so different, and we operate differently, and our advice probably is very different. You know, I don't do detail. I'm big picture. I look 5 years down the line and visualize that without concentrating on the small bits. Other people need the small bits, you know, and it's sort of, it's, you know, it's very different. And we were speaking before we went live about that whole, I read that article about, you know, that actually stop using mentoring and actually start talking about championing, which I'd prefer. So if actually getting behind people and sort of, yeah, making them feel like they can go out and rule the world, but on their terms and in their way, rather than putting my way on them, and people thinking that they want to learn my way, because it's not necessarily the right way for so many different people. If we all did it my way, the world would be fucked, to be honest.
But Emma, I think it's a really good point there. You're acting as a critical friend to your mentee, right? So you're looking at it, this is the whole power of mentoring. So, you know, that person may be in the detail, but actually your view of the holistic, bigger picture, 5 to 10 year horizon is probably where that person does need to be mentored. So being that critical friend, whilst you think that he or she may not be listening, the likelihood is that, you know, our brains are permeable, that some of this stuff is actually sinking in. So I do think some people will be on a journey. I call it like the squiggly career. So it might take them a bit more of a wiggle time. I was a bit of a wiggler. I'm now like, I'm no longer a squiggler. I'm going for it, right? And it took me a while to understand that about myself, that I was developing these behaviors because of my own lack of confidence, being a mummager of twins and military wife, put up all these barriers, like I call it like the Chinese wall around me, right? I literally did it to myself. But actually, if I'd got a mentor sooner, I would have absolutely had that career hack in place, and having a critical friend is important. So I think that for me, a mentor, I wouldn't want a yes person. I want someone to challenge me, to say, no, Rebecca, that's just nonsense. You know, what are you thinking of? So I think that the idea of actually having a mentoring relationship where you're a critical friend is good. Yeah. Because that should put that person back in the uncomfortable spot.
I like to think of it as placing a seed or planting a seed. So even though you, as the mentor, you might suggest something or get the help the mentee to think up something, they may not implement it straight away because, like you were saying, Becky, our brains are sponges, and there's also a lot going on, and sometimes it takes a little while for that seed to then start to grow. It can take years in some cases. I've often looked back and thought, oh, do you know what? I'm now prioritizing that thing that I remember talking about 2 years ago. I'm sure you can all relate to that. So it does get its way back through to you eventually. And so the mentor plays that key role in helping plant those early seeds that then later allow you to really validate and therefore prioritize that new thing that you want to do or implement.
It's funny, I had a seed at about 18. I was like stressing about going to uni and what to do and what to study, and part of me wanted to piss that off and do something completely different, and that was sort of, I didn't know what. And I remember it was an old family friend, and he was just sort of, we were at a dinner party at home, and he was sort of drunk, and he went, oh, just don't worry about it, just aim for doing what you want to be doing know what you want to be doing by 30 and be doing it by 35. And you know, you just have a kind of casual, and it just stuck. It was my thing. And so in my 20s, every mistake made, it doesn't matter, I'm still in my 20s. I don't need to know. It was sort of just that really little thing with just sort of, then, you know, it became my thing. And I was on track.
Men are really good at this. Like, they take career risk, and an average man, look at my husband, I'm going to be a general by the time I'm that age, right? And he was mapped since uni. In fact, when he was 13, he was wearing army camouflage, right? I think women need to think. We shouldn't act like men. We should think like men sometimes. Okay, so the idea of the average man will take more career risk. They're applying for jobs all the time. We know that if a woman doesn't fulfill a job description by 100%, she won't apply. A man will just put their hat in the ring.
30% they're in.
Yeah. And also they'll apply for lateral moves all the time. That's why they're all in the C-suite, because they've been developing. Like, whilst we haven't realised it, men have been under the radar, developing themselves, making loads of lateral moves, getting that leadership breadth, and then all of a sudden, because they're expanding their networks, they're in the C-suite. So I do think that we can learn from some of the behaviour science of men, and I think they are our allies. And so for me, sometimes I try and disrupt my thinking to think, how would a man think? I'm going up for a pay negotiation. How would a man deal with this, right? Ask your husband, ask your brother, ask a man, right? Don't always think about asking your friend who's another woman like you, because she's probably going to give you the same advice. So for me, it's that idea that men just will apply for jobs all the time, or whether it's even startup firms. As we said earlier, women they're less likely to be funded with venture capital firms, and also ethnic minorities are less than 1% in the world, right? And it's, why is that? We need to change the behaviour, and we need to start believing in ourselves.
I think it's the backing themselves, don't they? That confidence.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add on that before we run out of time, that there's something is shifting though. So I wanted to balance that point, which I think is really well made. That something is shifting, and particularly in the social enterprise world, industry sector, there are more women in this sector who are in boardrooms, who are founders, setting up social enterprises, leading our community organisations, than there are in any other sector in the SME, small business community. So that's really great. And we at Social Starters see so many more women come through our career change programs than we do men, so much so that we had to create a bursary award, a scholarship, to try and encourage more men to move into the sector, which I think is
wow.
Yeah. That is amazing. So just because we could talk for hours, and I just noticed what the time is. On what's your advice on like what not to do? Because that's the thing. There's a lot, I've had people who they expect you to deliver it on a plate for them. And that sometimes is that doing the work they just expect, and there's sometimes they can get angry because it's like, well, but you've got to do it, you've got to do the work, you've got to, what's that your advice on that, on the expectations, probably what's your advice on what people should expect to get from mentors?
I mean, if you even have to question, should I ask this? Maybe you shouldn't. But it's like, don't ask them to invest in you. Don't ask them to write your business plan for you. Don't get them to make your financial model, even though it might be really, really tempting. They're not an implementational consultant. They are literally a sounding board. They've got a pair of ears and they will ask questions. And within the realms of that, there's perhaps a discussion just to be had about where is their line when you're in those early stages of exploring the dynamic together.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's also, I think you've got to build your brand reputation as well, right? Because there are people, I'll be honest, that always ask me for templates, things that I've delivered in the past, and actually there is a give and take in the relationship. So you don't always want to be giving. So you kind of need to build a bit of a reputation where it's give and take, that perhaps you're happy to share a business case or a business plan, but actually you would like something back in return. So I do think you have to think about your own brand reputation, because you don't always want to be seen as the person that is always receiving. So it's what can you bring back to the relationship, I think, is important.
Yeah, it's boundaries, isn't it? You both sort of touched on that. Is that, because also I think another thing that, as women, we can get so emotionally invested in things, we go too far, don't we? It's that rather than the being the rescuer, it's that kind of triangle, isn't it? The victim, I can't remember all the thing, but rather than being the rescuer, you want to be the coach, and to know the boundaries on that you don't, as a mentor, you don't emotionally get involved, and the other way around is that, if someone's coaching you, you're not expecting them to rescue you.
It's an enabling relationship, isn't
it?
And look, maybe you need someone to help you write your business plan or do your financial model because you don't have that skill set. And so great, but that's an opportunity to go and hire a consultant that comes to Social Starters if they're a social enterprise. And there are people out there who are willing to do that, maybe even pro bono.
Yeah. And just to finish on this, people that go, I don't need any help, I'm on my own. And one thing I've learned, from mid-20s when I started on my own, I was very much on my own. The more I've let other people help and get involved, actually, the better it is, the bigger the tribe, the bigger, around me, and that support system. So what's your advice to people out there? Because there'll be women and men from who watch this and go, well, I don't need any help, I'm fine by myself. What are the lessons you guys have learned, sort of personally and through what you do, to counter that?
You know, that feels very lonely, doesn't it? It's like being that lone ranger. You know, I think that given the world is currently disrupted with COVID, with the new virtual world, there's new products entering the market of which, you know, we don't even know about. The future of skills, most of the jobs today won't exist in the next 10 years, right? So I think that the idea of you as a person just going alone is filled with quite a lot of risk, because there's a lot of external challenges out there. We call it VUCA, which is volatility, universal chaos and anarchy. That's what we are living now. It's the biggest disruptive period ever in our history. So I think it's important to think about that if you're thinking about doing it alone. I think the more people you can galvanize to help you to really navigate this external environment and the pressures, and as you said, who are the new customers, who are your customer avatars, you know, for your whatever it is that you're trying to build, the better. I would really caution being a lone ranger.
Yeah, it's much better to have that tribe around you, isn't it? The
Yeah.
support system. Cool. Well, thank you guys. Really good to chat. And we could, this could have gone on for hours and hours and hours, but it was little snippets of advice. So I'm sure you'll be involved with other sister stuff that we've got. And just finally, before I forget, because I always forget, a massive thank you to Gibson's Goodology. Amazing wellness drinks, CBD infused wellness drinks that actually taste really good and not like crap, like a lot of these drinks do. So and we get 25% discount for Sistr members, so that'll be attached to the video if anyone wants to buy them. But thank you both, Becky and Andrea. That was great. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.